So we are back. We have the pleasure today of having Konrad Sheehan give us a talk on one of the elements of the Eightfold Path, right action. Konrad is, we're fortunate to have him join us in the DTO. I guess technically you're with the New York Sangha, right? You're an independent, so we appreciate your wisdom, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Crick, if it's possible to mute yourself, it sounds like there's an 8mm recording.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yes, thank you. Dear respected Thich Tri Hong, dear respected Thich Nhat Hanh, dear Sangha, today is Saturday, December 18th, 2021. It's 6:54 a.m. Pacific time, and I will be speaking about right action with the Dharma Teacher Order of Connecticut Sangha, the Dharma Teacher Order National Sangha, from, well, it's almost sunny San Diego, California. I'd like to begin by acknowledging indigenous peoples and our ancestors of this land upon which we are all standing right now. There are two gathas I would like to share. And the first has to do with this jacket I'm wearing. It's an Order of Interbeing jacket. And I recite this gatha also to hopefully get out of my way. And it was inspired by two events. The first was Thich Nhat Hanh was in Seoul, Korea many years ago now, and he was getting ready to facilitate walking meditation, and he was just surrounded by photographers and people, and he couldn't move. And so he just thought, let the Buddha walk. And that inspired him to write 5 gathas, but I only mentioned the first gatha that he wrote. Thich Nhat Hanh considers it a lazy gatha because he doesn't have to do anything. And the gatha was simply, I don't have to breathe. I don't have to walk. Let the Buddha breathe. Let the Buddha walk. And the people opened up and he walked. And the second was, I have the privilege and the honor and the blessings to facilitate Sangha at Donovan Correctional Facility, State Correctional Facility in Otay Mesa, and it's a maximum security prison. So before I enter, I have my jacket kind of in the back seat on the driver's side. And so it also has 5 snaps, and I apologize today, I won't be able to demonstrate or write, so that's why we'll just allow it to kind of miss us. But this jacket has 5 snaps, and I wanted to try to practice mindfulness, becoming more mindful as I'm putting it on. I observed some of my Dharma brothers sometimes when it came time to put it on, and it was just an observation, is that they would just open it and put it on. And I thought, oh, maybe I could bring it back a little more and become more mindful. So with the 5 snaps, I recite this gatha, and it allows me to hopefully anchor myself and center myself and just come back to this moment. And the gatha is, And what I do is I unsnap it as I'm saying the first 5. I put it on and then I say thank you. So it's as I unsnap the first one from the hanger, it's Dear Buddha. And I try to really feel the Buddha. Dear ancestors, dear Thai, dear Dharma, dear Sangha, please allow me to be a conduit to your continuation. May every thought I have be your thoughts. May every word I speak be your words. And may every action I take be your actions. And please allow me to be skillful. And if I am not, please allow me to be aware of it so that I may be more skillful in the future. And then I say, thank you, dear Buddha, as I'm snapping. Thank you, dear ancestors. Thank you, dear Thai. Thank you, dear Dharma. And thank you, dear Sangha. And then I begin walking meditation. Sometimes I'll recite, I am here now, or I brought it back to just this step, no path, because I know where I'm going. I know I have to go through many checkpoints to get to the facility, but also I practice mindful walking just also to bring calmness not only to myself but to those with whom I come in contact, be it the administration or the officers who are really, really tense and under just a lot of anxiety. And it also invites them sometimes to laugh at me or laugh with me or ask questions. Some called me Yoda. One person thought I could fly over the buildings. And so it just brings a calmness, and it also invites questions, and it allows me to prepare for the facilitating of the Sangha. And the second Gatha I would like to share, it's in inviting the bell. And the bell, as we know, is a very, very important part of our practice. It allows us to really come back to our breath, to let go of the past, to let go of the future. And just it really allows us an opportunity to stop, which is Samantha, which is calm, abiding, or stopping. And then Vipassana, which is looking deeply. And it was, there was a sister, Sister Annabelle Laity. She was from, she's the first Western woman to be ordained by Thich Nhat Hanh in 1988 in the Plum Village tradition. And for decades, she, Sister Annabelle was saying, oh, when the bell was invited, I would only come back to waiting mode. So she was still waiting for the future. As a matter of fact, the other day I was driving, and now I'm retired, so I don't have to drive in that fast traffic every day. But the other day I had to go to the doctor, and it inspired me to think, rush hour, just driving with many minds who are caught in the future. They were just rushing to go to the future. And with this practice, it allows us to just come back. And what Sister Annabelle Laity did was she allowed herself to go from waiting mode, which is one aspect, but to take it a little deeper and to actually come back to this breath. So, dear Sangha, I would like to invite the bell and perhaps allow us the opportunity to just even come back just to this breath and letting go of the past and the future. Thank you, dear Sangha. With body, breath, speech, and mind in perfect oneness, I observe all that is arising and let it go, disbanding all suffering and greed and craving. Like a river, I shall happily and joyfully flow towards the ultimate dimension of reality. Listen, listen, this beautiful sound, the voice of the Buddha, the voice of our ancestors, brings me back to my true self, my true home, this moment. no past, no future, no beginning, no end, no birth, no death. Dear Sangha, as I mentioned, I have the honor and the privilege to practice on multiple yards at Donovan State Correctional Facility. And one day I was on Bravo Yard or B facility. And there's this one brother who's been a long-term practitioner. He was in for murder and it was reduced to manslaughter. So he received maybe 12 and a half years. But I also practice with some brothers who have been in for 50 years now. So in their mind, they're thinking, like if somebody comes in and they get 6 months, they're like, man, that's nothing. I can still smell the wine on your breath. It's so fresh. So even though it's for us an eternity, I guess for most it would be a short term. So these are the type of people with whom I'm practicing. And I guess I should mention first, so I don't forget, is I practice with murderers, serial murderers, robbers, you name it. But I've never met a murderer or a robber. I've only met somebody who's committed the act. And this is the gap where the healing and the transformation can take place, because if they identify as I am that, then if they ever are released back into society, perhaps they will reoffend. But this particular inmate was, as I mentioned, very charismatic. And at Donovan, they started allowed TED Talks or TEDx Talks, and they allowed two to happen prior to the pandemic. And with the TEDx, what's great about it is you have to audition, and if you become accepted, you do it in front of an audience, but it's also released on YouTube for maybe 5 or 6 months. And this allows the family to perhaps see how they're doing on the inside. And it also allows others to see what it's like to be practicing, I guess, in a facility. So this particular inmate auditioned and got it, and he was just so successful. I mean, he was receiving accolades from the officers, from the warden, from fellow inmates, and then also from people around the world, because it was out on YouTube. But one day he's walking on the yard, and as I say, there's always this one Turkey officer. And he says to him, he goes, you think you're great? You're still nothing but a piece of blah, blah, blah inmate. And I won't repeat the words. And what did he do? He just bowed and said, thank you, and walked away. And then he was saying, my previous self would have maxed him out. But because of the practice, because of his willingness to transform what has been transmitted to him, he was able to respond that way to the officer. But what is right action? Well, to begin simply, right action is coming back to this breath. In the Anapanasati Sutra, Anapana means breathing in and breathing out, and sati means mindfulness. In Vipassana, I don't know if you've ever had the chance to do a 10-day silent retreat, but very, very powerful. But the first exercise in breathing is to just focus on this triangulated area between the nostrils. And it allows you to feel the breeze perhaps. And when you begin to Vipassana, as in looking deeply, you begin to feel the sensations, perhaps the tickling. You feel the air going in and coming out. And you may even then begin to feel the air going in cooler and coming out warmer. So the basis of right action is really to do everything in mindfulness. Now, right action is also understanding, compassion, and non-discrimination. Understanding is a very, very important component or ingredient for love. There's a brief story of a very good-looking young college student, very wealthy, and many women, I guess, were attracted to him. But there's this one particular woman he really enjoyed being around in her company, but the mother disapproved. And to make a long story short, she finally says, why this lady? You have such wonderful choice. And he says, because she understands me. She understands my poetry. And so understanding is really key important for love. And non-discrimination really creates non-duality and interbeing. And compassion is the only ingredient, the only energy that allows us to connect with another individual. So in short, right action is love. And right action is also alive and well in the four immeasurable minds of loving kindness, of compassion, of joy, of equanimity or inclusiveness. And if we can find these qualities in our actions, this is right action. As I was preparing and enjoying the evolution of this, I was also every day, of course, and especially at the monastery, we recite the 5 contemplations before eating. And so I was really reflecting most notably on the 3rd and the 4th contemplation for right action. And right for the 3rd is, may we recognize and transform unwholesome mental formations, and in this case, especially our greed, and learn to eat with moderation. And the 4th is, may we keep compassion alive by eating in such a way that reduces the suffering of living beings, stops contributing to climate change, and heals and preserves this precious planet. So if we just, all of us practice those 2 contemplations, the world would be a much better place, just that alone. But sometimes right action is no action. And there was this story, it was during the war, it was the British Army, and they were kind of holed up or hunkered down in a bunker. And, you know, they had communications throughout, but there was the platoon, I guess, and the sergeant, and they received communications that they were surrounded by the enemy. So the young soldiers, I guess they wanted to just grab their guns and, you know, shoot their way out of this hole. But the sergeant was I guess, more experienced, and what he told them, and he ordered them, he says, no, we're going to stop. We're going to sit down, and I guess being that it's British, we're going to have tea. And so they were ordered to actually sit down and drink tea. And most of them were probably sitting in fear, probably thinking, this may be the last tea I ever drink, thinking about their families. But they did what they were told, and they sat down and they had their tea. And time went by. And then they received communications that the enemy dispersed and they were free to go. So had they responded to their fear, perhaps they wouldn't have lived to see their family or tell their story. But fear sometimes blocks us from right action. And in the danas, there's the giving, the offering of money or material things. There's the offering of time, but there's also the offering of non-fear. And non-fear is one of the greatest gifts we can offer another sentient being. Even in the Jatakas, the tales, in the Buddha's previous life, he was well on his way to being a bodhisattva. And in this particular story, he was in his life, rather, he was a captain of a ship. And on this ship were 500 merchants with all of their possessions. There was also one pirate, and this pirate thought, oh, I'm going to perhaps kill these 500 people so I could take all of their material possessions. And the Bodhisattva Buddha captain got wind of this, and he decided to compassionately, but actually to kill this pirate. And he did it for two reasons. He did it to, of course, save the 500 people, but he also did it to save this pirate from absorbing the karma of killing 500 people. And the Buddha did it with compassion, and he also had to then, as we would say, burn that karma in another life. I also noticed, I was reflecting upon the 5 mindfulness trainings, and of course they all interact, but I was noticing most notably in listening and learning is that they're really linked to the first, second, third, and fifth mindfulness training of reverence for life, generosity, and I guess it's called sexual responsibility or true love or right conduct, and also mindful consumption. And in mindful consumption, we think about the 4 nutriments of, of the edible foods, of sense impressions, of volition, and of consciousness. And in the 4 noble truths, we begin with the Buddha teaches us about the ill being. And he also shares with us the how we feed the ill being, or we find the causes of ill being. You know, those who suffer, if we feed joy, then we become much more joyful. But if we're drinkers or gamblers and we feed that, then the suffering, of course, continues. So we can discover the causes of our suffering. And then there is well-being, which is the beginning of stopping the feeding of the ill being. And then we have the beautiful Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right speech, right, as we're talking about briefly today, right action, and then right thought, right livelihood, right diligence, right meditation, and right concentration. But with today, right action is really connected to right view, right speech, and right thinking. And of course, it's very linked to right livelihood, but not always, but as I'll mention in a little while, but it can be linked even though it sometimes appears to not be linked. Our anger sometimes can be an obstacle to our actions. But we have wonderful Sariputra who shared with us the 5 ways of putting an end to anger. And if you don't mind, I would like to just briefly encapsulate those. It's a really good bodhisattva practice, as I'm finding, especially today in these times. When we see somebody whose perhaps actions are not good, but their words are good, perhaps we focus on the words. But if their actions are good and their words are not good, we let go of the actions, the bad actions, and focus on the words of this person. But sometimes their actions are not good and their words are not good, but deep down, there's something good about this person. So we go and we focus on that, on the goodness. And then, of course, we all know of some person who's just their actions are not good, their words are not good, and even their spirit right now in their life is not good. And so then we realize that they're suffering. So as our bodhisattva path, we learn to recognize and understand and help transform the suffering of this being, of this human being, not to fix it. Sometimes it's even just offering space or just offering an ear, but not really attempting to fix this individual. I mean, sometimes we can, of course. And our continuation is also determined by our actions of what we think and what we say and what we do are the continuation to those with whom we come in contact. You know, as when our body continues, of course, it goes back to the four elements of the fire, the air, the water, and the earth. But what we said and what we thought and what we did, that's really what continues on. I mean, recently we were reading Rabbi Heschel in the Seekers Book Club, and as we're reading Heschel's thoughts and his words, he was alive within us. He was there. He was continuing. But what better than the Buddha nature continuing on within us right now? His calmness, his breath, his thoughts, you know, his words, his dharma are right here, right now. The Buddha is continuing within us as we are all gathered together in Sangha. If I may, dear Sangha, I'd like to invite the bell once, just so that we can come back and let go of everything that was just said. And perhaps if there's a bird chirping, enjoy the chirping of the bird in your backyard or in your house. There was a story of a Dharma teacher who ordained in the Plum Village tradition. And earlier I mentioned, I alluded to right livelihood, and sometimes perhaps right livelihood doesn't appear to be within right action. But there's a Dharma teacher, Cherry Maples, and she was a Dharma teacher in the Plum Village tradition, and she was also a police officer for the Wisconsin Police Department. And she recently, a couple of years ago, passed away because of a bike accident. She was riding and she suffered injuries and as a result succumbed to them. But she, early on in her police career, she just finished, I guess, all the training, and she was now free of the supervisor or the buddy system. So she comes into work for the first day as a rookie, and her sergeant came to her and said, Maples, there's a homeless guy down in the basement. And so what happened in this police station, I guess they have a ramp where they have all the squad cars and they keep them there. And apparently a homeless gentleman walked down the ramp and was holed up there and he wouldn't leave. So the sergeant says, Maples, I want you to go down there and take this guy out, get him out of there. And so she was really nervous because she's walking down the stairs and she knew that that pretty soon the veterans were going to be coming down and observing her. So she walks down, and if I may back up a little, she became a Dharma teacher, but when Thich Nhat Hanh recommended she receive the lamp transmission, she said, why me? You know, I carry a gun. And he says, who better to carry a gun than somebody who practices mindfulness? And it really did transform her practice. And she wouldn't just go with force. She would try to communicate and connect with the people and oftentimes resolved issues without conflict. So here she is down in the basement with this homeless gentleman. And this homeless gentleman was convinced that he was the president of the United States and he wouldn't leave. And so here she is now, she's arguing with this gentleman saying, you know, you're not president. And then, so I guess a veteran guy comes down and he's like, Maples, hold on a second. You know? So he sees the patrol car closest to the homeless gentleman and he goes upstairs, gets the keys, walks down. He opens up the back door of the patrol car and he says, Mr. President, your limo awaits you. And the guy gets up, gets in the car and they drive off and he says, Maples, that's how it's done. So he used the right action to remove this gentleman. You know, sometimes our actions are not right actions and we're not proud of them. And I know that's true for me. A few years ago, a bunch of years ago, no more than a bunch of years ago now, I was practicing with the Compassionate Heart Sangha. And most every time I would go, I would stop off and like get a croissant or a muffin, just because where we were practicing was so quiet that I didn't want my stomach to rumble. So I'd get a muffin. And the way to enter, you're on the main street kind of, and you just turn off and go down a ramp and you're in the area. So as I'm turning, I noticed a gentleman there and he had a sign, you know, I guess hungry, need food. I forget exactly what it said, but I just thought, hey, let me get the guy a muffin and a coffee and, you know, give him a little fortitude. So I do, I get the muffin and I'm driving up the ramp and the light is red. And I'm rolling down the window and I'm saying, excuse me, sir, would you like a muffin and some coffee? And he was really, really grateful. He's like, yeah, well, thank you, thank you. You know? So here I am offering compassion to this guy and the light turns green and the guy behind me was just really on the horn. So here I am offering compassion and then flipping this guy off behind me at the same time. And it like woke me up. I was like, wow, these seeds of frustration or anger can get watered really, really fast. And I thought I learned the lesson. I thought, I'll never do that again. Well, not true. It was about maybe between 3 and 4 weeks ago. I was in Costco in Carlsbad, California here. And a friend of ours had surgery. So my wife thought, oh, she'll make her some stuff that she likes. And then we thought, instead of, you know, spending like $60 and you get a little vase with some flowers delivered, we thought, oh, I'll just go to Costco, get a bunch of flowers, make an arrangement, and we'll include that in with what we're offering to our friend. So here I am, I'm walking out of Costco, and I even had on a Deer Park shirt. I think it said, "Together we are one," you know. So here I am walking with this shirt with these flowers, and I've been going for 10 years, 12 years now. So you get to know the people, and the manager knows that I'm a practitioner. And for some reason, every time we see each other, we stop and we bow to each other. And so Scott, I see Scott and I'm bowing to him. Hey, Scott, how you doing? You know, how's your family? And I'm bowing, and then we say goodbye. And then I turn, and there was this like giant 6'3" bald-headed dude in front of me. And so I'm there, and I look and I said, oh, excuse me, sir. And he said to me, he's like, you know, if you took off your damn mask, you probably could see where you're going. And oh my gosh, the seeds just jumped again. And I grew up in the streets, you know, and I just got in his face because he was like being a bully, you know, and I was thinking, what if he, I guess I'm thinking this, what if he did it to my wife? What if he did it to somebody else? And I literally got in his face and I'm challenging him, really, you got a problem with that? You want to go outside, and I really got in his face. And you know what he did? He backed down. But the seeds didn't stop. And I was like, come on, let's take it outside, and he just walked away. And then later on, I went back and I apologized to Scott. I'm Scott, I'm so sorry for my words. And he's like, wow, what happened? And so I told him, and he actually had the guard, the security person pull up the tape on it to see what this person did. But I felt bad, I really felt bad doing that. And I guess I was seeking justification, and I found this proverb. It says, Chinese proverb, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. So I'm telling my daughter this experience, and then that proverb, and she's like, Dad, that's a Cyndi Lauper song. So the Dharma is everywhere. And actually, a little aside, I wanted to write a book entitled I Don't Know. And of course, the first sentence is always the most important sentence, as I'm told. So my first sentence would have been, I open the door, I walk outside. Do I go left? Do I go right? I don't know. And what does my wife say? She says, honey, we live in a cul-de-sac. But I could have walked around, and had an infinite amount of experiences. Part of our purpose on Earth, I think, in terms of our practice, is transforming. If we try to transform what has been transmitted to us, and what we don't transform, we can continue to transmit. And I know, perhaps if you allow me, I would love to still just share the story again of Angulimala. And Angulimala, for some reason, had the goal to collect 1,000 fingers. And so early on, he would get the fingers and then he would just put them on the trees or leave them in the woods, and the animals would eat them. So he was done. I guess he accomplished his goal of 900. And so he thought, I'm going to now start making a garland out of it, hence the name Angulimala, which means a garland of fingers. So he had he was up to 999, needed one more, and the Buddha got wind of it, and he thought, oh, what better than me? I am not this body is not me. And so he decided to offer himself, apparently. And so he's walking, doing alms in the town, and he noticed all the doors are closed, all the windows are boarded up. And so he's walking, doing alms, he knocks on the door, and the people were just full of fear. And, Buddha, the Angulimala's in town, and he's going to kill you if you don't come in, please. And I would imagine in this day and age, the Buddha probably just would have went, and he's continued on his alms, and he's walking, and then all of a sudden he hears, stop, and fierce, but the Buddha keeps calmly walking, and then again, stop, So the Buddha calmly stops and turns around and says, Angulimala, I stopped a long time ago, now it's your turn to stop. And I guess Angulimala got it, and he stopped, and to make a long story short, he became a bhikkhu. But the part I wanted to share about this in terms of the transformation is the people still had tremendous anger towards Angulimala. But one day he was out doing alms with his fellow bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and they attacked him and they bruised and bloodied him. But the thing that happened was Angulimala didn't fight back. So he really continued his transformation, and his Dharma name became Ahismaka. Ahisma is non-violence. So he went from garland of fingers to Ahisma. And that, of course, story happened centuries ago, but more recently, in terms of decades ago, during the Vietnam War, there was a soldier, and he was in Vietnam, and I guess near the village, and he decided, he got the brilliant idea of what he was going to do is make sandwiches and then put poison inside of them and leave them by the village gate. And so I think he made 5 sandwiches and he put poison in them, and he went back thinking the elders are going to eat them and then suffer. Well, what happened was these children came up, they were hungry, and they grabbed the sandwiches, and he's looking at them and he saw them eat it. And then of course the pain and the suffering, and these children died. And this man, this veteran suffered greatly. So he made his way to a veterans retreat in at Plum Village. And this retreat was solely for veterans. And he had I guess he shared his story, and he was meeting with Thich Nhat Hanh. And of course, we can't change the past, but what Thich Nhat Hanh recommended to this veteran who was suffering tremendously as a result of his actions, he said, what you can do is you can now begin taking care of perhaps 5 children, and not to adopt them, but perhaps you could guide them along. You could take care of them however it is. And then this will be the beginning of your healing, of your transformation. And so now his heart began to open and the healing began. There's a cute story about I just love the story about the interbeing of our actions. Thich Nhat Hanh tells the wonderful story of his right hand has written thousands of poems, many books. It's done so much work, whereas the left hand is just kind of hanging out. You know, if there's an itch on the ear, it's the ear. It really does nothing, but the right hand does all the work. But the right hand, you know, it doesn't say, you good, lazy, for nothing, nobody, you know, you never do anything, you're just useless, you know. So one day, the left hand was holding the nail to allow the right hand to have a hammer and put in the nail. But the right hand missed and hit the left thumb, and the left thumb was in pain. You know? And so what did the right hand do? He didn't yell at this left hand saying, oh, you deserve it, you never do anything anyway. No, the right hand put down the hammer and comforted and took care of the left hand. And conversely, the left hand noticed that the right hand's thumb was really cracked and dried from all the hard work. And so what did the left hand do? It grabbed some moisturizer, some balm, and it comforted and healed and took care of the left hand. So if I made their Sangha, I would just like to finish with a poem. And it's from a Mahayana nun. And the poem is, they drew a circle which shut me out. That's wrong action. Heretic, troublemaker, someone to flout. But love and wisdom had the wit to win. I drew a bigger circle which included the men. Thank you, dear Sangha. And if I may, I would, if you'll allow me, I'd like to just invite the bell 3 times, and then I'll invite the bell, the small bell twice, and then we can continue on to what's next. Thank you, dear Sangha. So if we can just let go of everything and come back to our wonderful breath. Thank you, dear Sandra.